Good afternoon. I'm Tom Butcher of the Zero Project, and I am honored to be joined today by, on my left, Noriko Takahashi, and on my right, Eduardo Moreira, both of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, or for short, UNIDO. And we're more than doubly pleased to see them here as two people. Also, it's the first time that UNIDO has joined us at the conference. And I have to say also, Eduardo, thank you so much. Eduardo has come all the way from Ukraine to join us, most of it by road and a tiny bit by air, I think. Today, we are going to discuss their Placed initiative, which is an initiative to advance inclusive entrepreneurship for persons with disabilities. So I am going to direct my attention first to Noriko and say, Noriko, could you please explain just what your Place initiative does?
Thank you. Oh, okay, now it's working. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for having us today. It's an honor to discuss the Placed initiative, which aims to foster sustainable industrial development and create inclusive job opportunities, especially for individuals affected by conflict. We later talk about, of course, a program toward people with disability, and this will be done by Eduardo, but let me just quickly discuss about the overall initiative about Placed. Placed stands for Post-Conflict Livelihood Creation through Entrepreneurship Development. And our beneficiaries include like refugees, internally displaced persons, returnees, and also their host communities. People whose livelihood have been disrupted by conflict. These individuals are very often among the most vulnerable in society. Through Placed, we support them in rebuilding their livelihoods by providing a foundation for sustainable self-reliance. So
Great.
That's the...
Super, thank you so much.
Sure.
You mentioned foundation and foundations. Those are really important for the sustainability, the stability and the scalability of any sort of initiative. So what foundation do you seek to establish in Placed to promote the success of the initiative?
Yes, thank you. Very often in this humanitarian context, which are affected by conflict, of course, there are so many different humanitarian type of support, which is sometimes very often focused on relief, basically like providing products and also services. But our approach centers on creating an environment that fosters diverse and inclusive job market, ensuring no one is left behind in post-conflict recovery and reconstruction process. I need to talk into the microphone. We actually strive to dismantle barriers and also create clear pathways for those affected by conflict to rebuild their lives and contribute to meaningfully to their communities. So, in other words, we actually invest in creating this sort of the ecosystem, the environment, but also we work with the meso-level institutions so that we build the capacity in their institutions to be able to continuously work on what we started so that our projects will not be one-off, but they're ensuring the sustainability as well. Equally important is our focus on also host communities and not just displaced populations, where we prioritize enhancing social cohesion through no harm principle. This ensures that our efforts benefit both displaced people but also local populations, fostering positive and sustainable integration process.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes, the whole issue of community and the importance of community is absolutely, for me, paramount in so many instances. So I'm now going to turn my attention to Eduardo. Eduardo, you're at the cutting edge. Tell me, how do you collaborate with employers and policymakers?
Hi, Tom. Well, my basic strategy is guerrilla tactics. Uh, so a lot of ambushing involved. With policymakers is relatively simple. We have mechanisms with the government that allows us to reach them, and through them going a little bit downwards to these meso-level institutions that Noriko is talking about, like regulators, educational boards, etc. When it comes to the private sector, most of the scenarios where we work, there is a strong lack of institutions that organize them. So this is where you need to be on the ground, chasing them down, go to their conferences, talk to them, and just visit them. A lot of the times we just go and knock at the doors and come in. Yeah. And we find this to be quite successful because there's a distance between what is the private sector and what is the international community. They don't speak the same language. So by being there and talking to them in the terms that they do understand, facing the real problems or these small but real problems that they have, kind of allows us to create this network and this baseline. Because as a general rule, private sector is willing to engage, but they have their own timings, they have their own problems that need to be recognized.
I can relate to that. It's hustle, hustle, hustle. So that's the general way you go about it. Can you tell us in particular about your work in Ukraine?
Sure. I can tell you a little bit of what we're doing right now and how we got there. So right now we are facing in Ukraine a very big number of people that have suffered traumatic amputations resulting of the war, a lot of them veterans. So it's not only the physical disability that they are facing, but also it comes attached with some mental issues. And the population of Ukraine is quite dispersed. So we needed to go where people were. At this point was the rehabilitation centers. So these aggregators of people, and we started to introduce to them the concept of entrepreneurship. This was, again, a hustle, chasing them down, beating them up so that they were very soft to absorb us. Yeah. But we faced a lot of difficulties because when we were talking to them about entrepreneurship, their perception is that, oh, you cannot push people that are in this vulnerable stage into going out to business because it's highly stressful scenario. These people still need to do all of their recovery. You know. But again, we work at all the levels of the program. From try this, we will make sure that the trainers are trying to prepare the trainer how to guide the activity in a way that it aligns. There's a shift because they are seeing the changing mentality. So we are working with a renowned psychologist that by giving the space and the tools for them to work, even in a simulation based, the discussion stopped being regressive. So we are no longer rehabilitating because all of that is regressive. Yep. It's going back to the person that they were and they no longer can be because they've lost limbs, they've lost their vision, and now they are being habilitated to do something else. And because it's a forward-looking conversation, this is the part that is transformative. So now we are talking about post-traumatic growth and about how do we integrate this education habilitation attached to what is the psychological support and the clinical side of the psychological support.
Thank you so much. So taking away from the first part of that, I think what I have gathered as an ingredient of your success, particularly in Ukraine, is that your approach is an approach customized to context. And only by customizing it to context will it work. And I just had one question. We're coming towards the end, but I had one question is it quite often difficult to identify who all the stakeholders are in the story to make it work?
Identifying the stakeholders is not that complicated. There is institutional barriers. Those are complicated. There are stakeholders, government, private sector. But when we are talking about inclusivity, this is not only institutional, this is also social. Everything works together. And we do seem to be have a lot more success when we find people, not institutions. We find our own champions, and then we bring in the expertise to customize our approach to the human resources that is there, and building up that resource, and then from there, trying to organize the institutions and building them up to go into what is a positive direction.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course, humans, humans, humans. Wonderful. So we're just about to come to the end, but we have time, and certainly we have time, as I do with a lot of the people with whom I speak, is to give us 2 or 3 things that they would like us to take away, both me as the interviewer and you as the audience. So I'm going to pass it over to Noriko. So what 2 things or 3 things would you like the audience to take away with them?
Your question is related to entrepreneurship for the disabled.
The Placed Initiative.
Yeah, okay. I think the most important takeaway for me is that the capacity building part, you know, because we work very often in this humanitarian kind of context, and we work very much also with humanitarian, you know, players. Yeah. That are like, of course, as I also mentioned, but sort of humanitarian focus and development focus is very different. And often the case is that in humanitarian context, a lot of funding actually flows to humanitarian actors. And, you know, but in recent years, I mean, increasingly, the length of each conflict is getting longer and longer, average more than 10 years. So, what happens is that, you know, after a few years of like outbreak of the conflict, the funding depletes. Right. So there's no humanitarian support, but also, so basically, you know, but the situation is still there. You know, we haven't really found a sort of an exit or solution to that situation. So these displaced people are just left there, like sometimes stranded, so to say, to be able to sort of cope day to day. And so, you know, so it's very important for like development partner like UNIDO to come in to sort of make that bridge between this humanitarian phase and also development phase. So that, I mean, this is what we call the Humanitarian-Development Nexus, right? So that's the takeaway, or let's say that's like the motto, or like, you know, the something that we actually really strongly believe in and try to promote.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And Eduardo, you have 47 seconds from now.
So for me is that there is a very big necessity to look at disability inclusion not as one single problem. It is a multitude of problems, and there is no silver bullet. You need to develop the contextualized solutions and then putting them into place, instead of this very broad, generic approach, and not only focusing on what is the categorization of disability, but also looking at what are the limitations and how do we work these institutions so that they can absorb this instead of creating just specialized. So it's all about integrating them into the general system.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, UNIDO. Thank you much, Noriko. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Great to see you here. We hope you'll come back again. And goodbye from me for this afternoon.